Alrighty, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us today for our live program presentation about healthy eating whilst at home during this challenging time. So my name is Emily. I'm an accredited practicing dietitian and I am also a facilitator of the LIFE program. I've been facilitating the program for a couple of years ago. And yeah, I'll be taking you through the presentation today about healthy eating while at home. I do apologise for the delay in getting started, just having a few technical issues, but hopefully we'll be right to get going. And please feel free to ask any questions. You can submit your questions via the Q&A tab at the bottom of the screen at any time throughout the webinar. So just before we get started, today's webinar is going to go for about 45 minutes. All participants will be muted. So yeah, you'll just be hearing me talk, but as I said, feel free to ask any questions in the Q&A tab throughout. If you missed out on asking any questions during the webinar, you can email lifewebinars@diabetesvic.org.au and yeah, we'll get an answer through to you. And you will also receive a recording of this webinar and the answers to the questions that were asked during the webinar as well. And at the end of the webinar, if you can, please click on the link provided to you to complete a feedback survey about the webinar. That would be excellent. So thank you so much. So as a little bit of an overview, I know there are lots of questions and posts and things going around at the moment discussing nutrition and the immune system. As much as I wish that I could tell you that there was one magic food or one magic pill or potion or something that would strengthen your immune system and prevent you from getting sick at all. Unfortunately, there is not such a magic food or solution, but the best thing that we can do to support our immune system is to have a healthy, balanced diet as a really good baseline. So when we talk about what a healthy, balanced diet is, it's not any fad diets or anything really crazy, fancy or difficult. It's really just about following our Australian Guide to Healthy Eating as well as possible. So that Australian Guide to Healthy Eating involves the 5 food groups. So the 5 key food groups include vegetables, and vegetables also include beans and legumes as well. So that could be things like chickpeas, cannellini beans, lentils, also 4-bean mix, for example. And they're really, really versatile foods and really handy shelf-stable foods as well. So really we should be trying to have a really good portion of veggies with each meal, and I'll sort of show you a little bit more about the portion of this as we go throughout. Other foods which are really important for a good immune system and just health and well-being in general include fruit. Ideally we should be trying to have 2 or 3 pieces of fruit per day. So yeah, however you like to spread that across the day. Just getting it in, I guess, is the main thing. We've also got our dairy foods group, and I think this is a group which probably often is a little bit underrated, but is still really, really important because it's a great source of protein to keep our muscles nice and strong, but also obviously really good calcium for our bones. But it's got lots of other useful nutrients through it as well. So our dairy group includes milk, yogurt, and cheese, or alternatives. So if you can't tolerate dairy or you choose not to eat dairy, trying to substitute with alternatives like soy milk, almond milk, and cheese and yogurt alternatives as well. Ideally, we do say ideally using mostly reduced fat options, just to help with cholesterol and weight management as well. The other thing that's important and part of the 5 key food groups is our meats group. So lean meats, poultry, fish, eggs, tofu, nuts, And again, our legumes fall into that category as well. So they're fairly versatile, and this group is pretty varied, has lots of really important nutrients in it. So trying to get something from that category into your lunch and your dinner of an evening will go a long way. And then finally, we've got our grain-based foods. So they're more like your cereal foods or your starchy carbohydrate foods. So that could include things like oats or porridge, muesli, breakfast cereal, bread, preferably multigrain bread if you can, and then also things like pasta and rice, which again are great shelf-stable options. We then have, of course, got our sort of sometimes and in small amounts, or our treat foods down in the bottom right-hand corner, because those foods are obviously really quite enjoyable, but we do know that they don't really provide us with a whole heap of nutrition or nutrients, but they're okay to include sometimes just for enjoyment. And then also in the other corner, we've got the image of our different oils. So using oil is fine. Olive oil is one of the best types of oils that you can cook with. And yeah, that is okay to be used in moderation and healthy diet as well. So just moving on to the next slide, as I mentioned, talking about the balance of these foods. So we know what the 5 food groups are, but putting into practice and getting the balance right is also important. So you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, there's an image of a plate. So as a bit of a guide, what we want to try to be doing is dividing your plate up into 3 different sections. So at least half of your plate, ideally, should be filled up with non-starchy vegetables, or really colourful vegetables or salad ingredients. So that would include any vegetables other than potato or sweet potato. So like you could have green vegetables, carrots, zucchini, or salad in there as well. Then the other parts of the plate, we want just about 1/4 of the plate to be filled up with your carbohydrate-based foods. So that would be about a fist-sized portion of, say, for example, potato, sweet potato, bread, pasta, or rice. And then in the remaining 1/4 of the plate is where our protein-based foods would go. So that could be a piece of meat, a piece of chicken, piece of fish, might just be a couple of eggs, might be some tofu or tempeh, tin of tuna, or that is also where you might like to use some legumes like the lentils or 4B mix or something. And yeah, as I said, that would be about 1/4 of the plate, or another way to think about it would be about the size of the palm of your hand. So not your fingertips, just the palm size there. So that's a bit of a rough guide for most people. So when talking about this plate model, I find that it's often really kind of easy to envisage that in the case of if you're having like meat, potato, and a few veggies, that's pretty straightforward. But it also applies to really any type of meal that you're having. And that's what we've sort of tried to picture on the right-hand side of the screen. So you can see, for example, we've got that example of the meat, potato, and veggies. But then there's also an example of spaghetti bolognese, where it's a small piece or a small amount of pasta, a small amount of bolognese sauce, and we've still got half a plate of salad there. Likewise, there is a stir fry where there's a little bit of rice, a little bit of chicken, and a really good portion of veggies there as well. Now, this model, although again, it's easy to think of it for tea at night, it can be included in other meals throughout the day as well. So you can sort of see down the bottom line, there's a sandwich as an example. So we've got the bread as our carbohydrate. There's say some chicken or egg or tuna or something inside it for the protein. And then as you can see, there's plenty of salad in it as the vegetable or salad component. Likewise with the omelette, we've got the egg for protein, we've got a slice of bread for the carbohydrates, and we managed to pack heaps of veggies in there as well to get that fibre and those antioxidants and vitamins. So yeah, this really can apply any time of the day. And I think it's just, yeah, sometimes about thinking a little bit differently or a bit more creatively, just trying to squeeze those veggies in wherever you can. So onto the next slide now, I'm just talking about some top food shopping tips, because obviously at the moment the shops have been pretty chaotic lately, and we don't want to be spending too many trips to the supermarket at the moment. So using online shopping is a good option when that's accessible. I know at the moment there are some restrictions around that, but have a look and see if any of those options do apply for you. Whether or not though you shop online or not, there are a couple of really key things that can be really helpful for everyone. So number one would be trying to plan your meals in advance and having a bit of a shopping list. So this does not mean that you need to have like a total comprehensive meal plan with breakdown of absolutely everything that you're going to have per every minute of the day. But it might be that you just know that, on Monday we're going to have some minced meat. Mince could be used for spaghetti bolognese or homemade rissoles or burgers or tacos or something like that. So you've got a bit of a rough idea there and can take it, I guess, as it comes a little bit on the day. But then you might also buy some chicken and know that you could use that in, say, a stir fry or something else. So you've still got a bit of an idea, and then you've got, I guess, like a plan of attack when you do go into the supermarket to know what you're getting. If you've got a shopping list as well with those key things on it, do try and stick to the shopping list. It can be really tempting and it can be difficult if you don't have a plan to sort of just be grabbing lots of stuff willy-nilly. And then that obviously is going to increase the food cost. It could also increase food waste if you're buying stuff that you don't necessarily need or aren't necessarily going to use, which then is obviously a waste of money. But also, if you haven't got a plan and you're just buying as you go, it does sort of, I guess, open up the risk sort of maybe buying some more things that are maybe not as healthy, those kind of treat things that sneak in. So yeah, trying to stick to the list and keep on top of those things would be a good thing to do. Also bearing in mind that healthy plate model, which we just had a look at the previous slide there. So knowing that you need to have a really good portion of veggies and salad and smaller amounts of meat and carbohydrates. So ensuring that you're buying things or that you've got things at home that fit each of those categories and that you've got rough sort of portion amounts for each of those things. Yeah, so some great staple ideas to buy and to have on hand, things like eggs, because they're so versatile in many different ways. Canned fish, whether that be tuna, salmon, sardines, it lasts a long time and again is really versatile. Brown rice and other grains, quinoa, pasta, those sort of things. Plenty of veggies as well, so whether they're fresh or frozen. I think it's really important to make sure that you are still buying fresh stuff like vegetables and fruit at this current time. I know there's been a lot of demand and sort of shortages in the supermarket, but everyone seems to have sort of been really going for those shelf-stable things and maybe letting those fresh things drop off the radar a little bit. So do try and include those in your shopping as well. So just further on from that, the next slide does have a list of food staples there for you. So pantry staples would be items that are canned, dried, or considered non-perishable, so they'll be lasting for some time. So examples of that, just expanding what we've just touched on, could be pasta, rice, flour, lentils, chickpeas, baked beans, so those legumes, tuna or other canned fish, as mentioned, as well as things like herbs, spices, sauces, and stock as well, because yeah, that just helps you obviously add some flavour to your meals as well. Fridge staples, so there would be things that need to remain a little bit more fresh because they are perishable. So examples of that would be milk, where you could either get that fresh or long life. So it might be good to get some fresh and then just have a couple of long life ones in the cupboard as well. Also getting some yogurt and some cheese, mostly low fat as mentioned before. Some eggs, because they're super versatile, as I said, and then not forgetting those fresh fruit and veggies. And then some freezer staples that would be items that could be frozen and consumed later down the track. Examples of that could be like beef or chicken or mince. Fish fillets as well, they're a good one, or other seafood items, as well as some frozen veggies as a backup. You might even think about frozen fruit as well, so whether that be frozen berries or frozen mango, because that can be used to make smoothies, or could be also used to make some healthy dessert options or just as a snack. So yeah, this kind of list or ideas, it sort of covers all of those 5 food groups and is really just a starting point. So take stock or take check of what you've already got on hand, because you might not need to buy all of these things, and then just fill in the gaps around that. So using those staples, I've just got a few pantry meal ideas here. So utilising the eggs, as we spoke about before, you could be making things like a vegetable frittata. I mean, I say vegetable, but you could add in also ham or different things in there as well. Vegetable fritters, they're another great lunch or dinner option, or breakfast even. Omelettes. Then if we look at things like pasta, could be doing pasta with tuna or with tinned tomatoes. Throw some veggies in there if you can as well, just to get back to that plate model that we were talking about before. Veggie and lentil soup is really great, quite cost effective, and also is going to last for a little while as well. So you might get a few days out of that. It's good for the freezer also, to if you're making that a little bit in advance. Similarly, veggie and chickpea curry or dal, also easy, cost effective, and will freeze well. Also things like tuna, salmon patties, served with like a salad or some vegetables would be a really good meal. Bean burritos, and then just to include a sweet thing in there as well, an easy fruit crumble can be another idea, just made with like a can of fruit and say some muesli on the top as well. So keeps it tasty and interesting. And if you see slide 11 further throughout here, we've got some references for some healthy recipe ideas for you to explore a little further. So also onto the next slide, just looking at healthy options for takeaway. Because obviously a lot of places are now moving to doing more takeaway, but it's still important to sort of have some ideas or some guidance when purchasing healthy takeaway options. So my tips for that would be, try to select meals that do include vegetables or salad in them. So it might be getting salads or getting like a stir fry that has plenty of veggies through it. Or order an additional serve of these if the meal doesn't automatically come with them. Or another option, if you wanted to keep costs down, you could always be microwaving a packet of frozen veggies at home when you get the other component of the meal brought in, or making up a quick salad to have on the side when you purchase the other components. Try to resist any deep fried, crumbed or pastry based foods. So that would include things like obviously chips, could be calamari rings, could be spring rolls, for example. They're all options of things that are deep fried, crumbed or in pastry. So those things are going to be contributing a lot of fat and also a lot of calories. So it would be a better idea to choose some grilled options. So you might choose to get, say, a Vietnamese roll, which is not deep fried, it's fresh, or just some other things that are more fresh based options. Also trying to choose steamed rice over fried rice or coconut rice, as again those other options will add extra fat and extra calories. Similarly, creamy sauces, try and limit those options, whether that be in pasta meals, or even with curry-based dishes. So be aware of things that have really heavy coconut-based sauces, and try and go for either options that have a tomato base to them, or for stir-fried options instead. They'll contain a lot less fat and you'll get a lot more fibre out of them as well. And then the other sort of traps to watch out for, try not to be tempted by too many extra add-on ingredients, such as like the extra garlic bread or the extra side of chips and things like that, that can sort of derail efforts otherwise. And try and resist the upsize offers. Might seem like good value, but yeah, it's not so great for your health at the end of the day. So try and choose a smaller size where possible. And also remember that you don't have to eat everything that you purchase. You don't always have to finish everything on your plate. Like, it's important to listen to your hunger and fullness cues and to respect those. Alternatively, you could even try making your own takeaway or fake away options at home. And as you can see on the slide there, I have got a link to a healthy homemade takeaway options from the Live Lighter website. So yeah, check that website out and yeah, see what you can do. So I just mentioned then that it was important to try and listen to your hunger and fullness cues and not eat too far past that feeling of fullness. And that is really part of the idea behind mindful eating. So I know mindfulness is a little bit of a buzzword at the moment, and mindfulness is really all about bringing awareness into the present moment without judgment. So we're not judging, we're just taking notice of what's going on at the present time. So an extension from that is mindful eating, and that is really about developing an awareness of the process of eating and interacting with food. So mindful eating is not so much what you're eating, but it's focusing on how you're eating. And that involves responding without judgment. So not putting any blame, shame, or guilt attached to what you're eating. We're just observing it for what it is. Mindful eating also involves connection with the environment, with the food, and using all of our senses. So have a think how often you've been sitting down eating a meal and you know, the TV's going, or you're thinking about the work that you have to do as soon as you finish your meal, or if you've been sitting in front of the TV with a packet of chips or a packet of lollies or something, distracted by the TV, and you go to have another handful only to find the bottom of the packet and be surprised that the whole packet's gone. You've eaten the whole thing without really even noticing. And that's sort of a product of that mindless eating, whereas mindful eating would be connecting and being more aware about that. And so it's about tuning in to your body cues rather so much than learned rules, restrictions, and societal expectations. So usually when I talk about mindful eating, I get people to have a think about a baby. So babies will, when they're really little, they'll cry when they're hungry. You'll feed them and they'll stop crying. They'll have a sleep or do whatever, and then they'll start crying again because they're hungry again. So babies have this really innate sense of intuition about when they're hungry, when they're full, how much they need to eat, and they'll stop when they're full. Whereas unfortunately, as we get older, we sort of start to lose sense of that. We start to eat just because the clock says that it's lunchtime, or we make other associations such as every time I have a cup of tea, I need to have a biscuit with it, or different little things like that. So those are the sort of things that might be a little bit mindless, or that you might just be doing as an association rather than an actual physical need. So there is, I will also say there is also more information about mindful eating in the participant workbook for those people who are already enrolled in the program as well. So now just following on from that little blurb about what mindful eating is, I'll take you through a mindful eating exercise. So if you can, grab yourself a piece of food to eat. It doesn't have to be much at all, just one little piece of food. So it could just be, say for example, like a sultana or a mandarin segment, or just something really, really small. Could even be a little piece of chocolate if that's what you want. But I'll talk you through the exercise. So yeah, I'll make a start. If you haven't got your food, that's okay, you can catch up. So don't eat your food yet, just wait till I talk you through it. So the following exercise is really simple and it's only going to take a few minutes. So take your piece of food and start just by having a look at it. So imagine, this might seem a little bit funny, but it's a good exercise. But imagine that you've just come from another planet and you've just landed on Earth and you see this food. You've never seen it before in your life. So have a good look at it, like really check it out. Have a look at what it looks like. Do you notice anything about it? Are there different patterns on it? Are there different ridges on it? Does the colour change at all over the piece of that food? So take a few moments to have a look at that. Now, next step would be to close your eyes. So explore this food just using your sense of touch. So what does that food feel like between your fingers? Is it hard? Is it soft? Is it grainy? Is it sticky? Is it dry, or is it kind of wet? Notice also that as we're talking about this, I'm not asking you to judge the food. I'm not even getting you to think about the nutritional value of the food so much. It's just about noticing the different aspects of your experience, just using one sense at a time. And this is really what it means to be mindful. So we're still not eating it yet. I know for some people this can be really kind of excruciating, but yeah, taking the times is important. So next we're going to explore this piece of food with your sense of smell. So what do you notice about the smell? Does it have much of a smell at all? Is it a strong smell? Is it a nice smell? Does it remind you of anything? Does it, take you back to any experiences that you've had before? So now, slowly, you can take that food to your mouth and begin eating it. So just take a small bite of the food. Don't swallow the whole thing all at once. Take a small bite and see what it feels like in your mouth. Does the food change at all whilst it's in your mouth? Does the texture change? Does it feel different? Does it melt? Just notice what happens there. Chew the food very slowly and notice the sensory experience of chewing and tasting. Notice how the food will change as you do continue to chew it. You might even want to close your eyes for a moment just to focus on the different sensations that come up as you're eating. Notice if the intensity of the flavour is changing moment to moment as well. So take a little bit of time just to slowly finish this first bite, being aware of these simple sensations. Yeah, so that's the first bite. If you've got any food left, you can take your time to finish that food, chewing it really slowly and continuing to pay attention as you go. Just pay attention to it moment by moment. So I'd also like you to have a think about what you noticed as you were eating that food, especially if this was a common food that you do eat often, or if this is a food that has been problematic for you in the past. I think it's really interesting and really useful to try to eat in a mindful manner more regularly. It doesn't necessarily have to always be that slow and to that level of detail, but it is really, really valuable to pay attention to your food and to the process of eating it, because it allows us to fully experience the different flavors and textures of a food. So often I find that people will, and I'm guilty of this as well, don't get me wrong, but we eat really quickly. We might not chew food particularly often or particularly well. We might swallow food too early before actually starting to break those flavors down. So by taking your time with your food more, by noticing it more, you'll actually get more of a sensory experience from it, which can bring more enjoyment. You may also find that if you're eating in this way and you're enjoying your food more, you might actually need less of it to feel satisfied. Such as if you were eating a block of chocolate and you're eating a row at a time, it's very easy to sort of quickly finish the whole block and maybe not enjoy it that much. Whereas if it's broken up and you're eating it piece by piece and really savouring each piece, you may find that you don't need to eat as much to get satisfaction out of it. So don't get me wrong, when we talk about mindful eating, as I said, you don't have to go to that extent every time, but I think there are certainly elements of that that can be really, really useful to integrate into your everyday eating and your everyday meals. I have also had people who have done this exercise and found that they actually didn't really enjoy the food that they were eating all that much after all. It was just that they'd placed that food, placed so much value on that food. But yeah, when they actually got down to it and actually tasted it, it wasn't quite as good as what they'd made out. So I know it seems like a silly thing to say, but really do check if you are enjoying your food before eating it. Sometimes, we might just eat just for the sake of it. But yeah, food should be about enjoyment as well. So on the next slide, I've popped some healthy resources, or useful resources there for you, sorry. So a couple of useful websites include the Eat for Health website, and that is where the Australian Guide to Healthy Eating came from. So that image that we saw at the beginning of the presentation, that's all from that website. There's also some really good recipes and other health tips on that website as well. So it is worth a look. Live Lighter is also a great resource as well. So that is where I referenced the healthy takeaway guide from before. There's also lots of healthy recipes and things like fat counter and sugar counter on that website as well. The Dietitians Association of Australia also has really up-to-date information from dietitians. And the Australian Healthy Food Guide, that is a magazine with heaps of healthy recipe and food ideas in it. The magazine you can usually buy at newsagents and supermarkets and the like, but they've also got a website as well. So I find the website really practical to access lots of really healthy recipes and just different ideas and information. There's also a couple of useful apps which you might like to try out. So Our Groceries is one app which can be quite useful for those living in busy households because it allows you to, well, basically it's an online shopping list, I suppose, or on an app. So you can be going in and entering in food items that you need as you use them, as you finish them, so that you can remember what you need. But you can sync it with other family members as well, so they can add their things on as they need, and you can also strike things off as you purchase other things as well. So it's really a live modifiable shopping list, so that can help with planning and sticking to the list and sticking to the budget and all those sort of things. And also Food Switch is another really useful app. So it's a smartphone app that allows you to scan the barcodes of packaged foods, and then it gives you some, basically gives you like a traffic light tool as to how healthy that option is. So if it comes up with red, then it's not such a great option. but if it comes up as green, then you're obviously onto a winner. But it will also present to you some similar products in that category. So say you were looking at a breakfast cereal, it might indicate that the cereal that you're looking at is perhaps too high in sugar, but it would give you some other healthy alternatives instead. So that's a really sort of practical option or assistance with label reading. So as a summary, as I'm coming to the end of the presentation, some of my top tips and tricks, sorry, I'm tongue-tied there. My top tips and tricks for shopping would, number one, be prepared when you go shopping. So have that list. Also, don't go shopping on an empty tummy either. You'll be prone to buying some extra, maybe not so healthy things if you're doing that. Make use of healthy special buys. So that would be looking for basic, staple, healthy foods that are on special and stocking up on those. But just make sure that they are things that you're actually going to use. And don't get caught out by the not so healthy special buys. So you don't want to end up buying 2-for-1 packets of biscuits or chocolate bars or something like that. So it's going to be really tempting and hard to resist once you do get home. My other rules would be out of sight, out of mind, but also then putting things in mind that you do want to eat. So if you've got chocolate and biscuits and chips and those sort of things that you're trying to cut down on, try and keep those out of sight so that you're not thinking about them or you're not tempted to eat them regularly. But on the flip side, try and keep things like fruit, vegetables, maybe other healthy snacks like nuts, trying to keep those visible so that if you do get a bit peckish, that you can sort of see those as your go-to options. I'd also suggest trying to have a bit of an eating schedule in mind. Now, I don't mean that this has to be exact to the absolute minute, but especially if you're working from home or if you're at home with the kids because they're not at school, trying to maintain a bit of a routine around eating is really useful. So still trying to have breakfast in the morning, maybe trying to have a morning tea or a recess time snack around 10:30, 11. Trying to have lunch around that midday kind of marker, maybe a snack late afternoon, and then dinner in the evening. So trying to stick to this rather than sort of coming and going to the pantry or to the cupboard just as you feel, or skipping meals and that sort of thing, because that can really derail your healthy eating efforts. And then my final tip would also be to get the balance right. So following that healthy plate model that we looked at earlier, so trying to really squeeze all those veggies in and get everything in the right balance. So to further summarize my key take-home messages, preparation is really important, whether that be preparation of the shopping list, preparation having the food in the house, or maybe just getting a few bits and pieces ready ahead of the evening meal or the day before if you know you've got a busy day coming up. Balance is absolutely key. We can have those treat foods in our diet as long as they're in moderation, and I think as long as we're eating them mindfully and really, really enjoying them, not just eating them as we go without really taking notice. And finally, just focus on getting more of the good stuff in. I think with nutrition, a lot of the time, there's a real focus on things like being bad or things that we should not be eating. You know, don't eat that, don't include that. And that can be really negative. But if instead you flip it around and just focus on getting more of the good stuff in, so crowding your diet out with more vegetables, more fruit, filling yourself up with that, then there's just less room for all the other things anyway. And so that's a good way of it. And then finally, my last slide is just my references there.